For analysis, I'm joined by Jason Poblete, President of the Global Liberty Alliance. He's a domestic and international law expert. Thank you for joining me today, Jason.
Thanks, Monse, for having us.
Give us some background. What happened last week in Cuba?
Well, Monse, 2021 can be for Cuba what 1989 was to the Czech Republic, what it was to Poland, perhaps even Romania, where the military, for example, took the side of the people. You have a confluence of so many factors that created this perfect storm, decades of communism, decades of religious oppression, decades of poor mismanagement, and it was hit with a pandemic. So you have people who were hungry, who were tired, who were sick, very sick, and they just decided, you know what, we've had enough. And from what we can tell right now, this was spontaneous, this was island-wide, and frankly, I think it's the first time in modern history, I think, since the end of the Cold War, that we've seen this much political activity. So for folks saying this was not something that was in opposition to the government, I think they're misinformed. This is not about COVID. This is much broader, and we have an opportunity now as Americans to provide support to the Cuban people in a variety of ways.
And so many say that these protests were caused by a lack of resources because of the pandemic. But a Politico article earlier this week quoted former Florida Democratic State Representative Javier Fernandez saying the people of Cuba are taking to the streets chanting libertad. They're not chanting vacuna, so they're not chanting vaccine. He was emphasizing why calling on additional sanctions against the leaders of the failed socialist communist regime were a critical party platform. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you might see or might want the Biden administration to do?
Well, I want to point the Biden administration and all American policymakers to take a very close look at 1998, when at the time Pope John Paul made his first trip to Cuba. And something I heard on the streets of Cuba this whole week is he was saying to the Cuban people in 98, be not afraid. That was his message. And what I was hearing in Cuba on the streets were we're not afraid anymore. We're not going to be silenced. And those were the chants that I heard at many places throughout the island. And I think we have to take a few steps back. We have to focus on the power of this great country to influence through peace, through information, as Governor DeSantis said in that clip, and be prepared to help them when they make that decision. We don't know what that will be like, but we have the resources, we have the ability to do it unilaterally if necessary, and I think we should consider that, to help the Cuban people after decades. What happened, Monse, in Cuba this week was not a surprise. We have known this day was coming sooner or later. Let's get prepared, let's get organized, and let's help the people of Cuba put that country in a better way forward. That will help, by the way, not just Cuba, but the entire hemisphere.
That's right. Jason, you talked to us about the influence of the church. 4 Cuban-American bishops signed a statement in solidarity with the Cuban people. Has the church been helpful in protecting peaceful demonstrators? Tell us a little bit of what's going on there.
I'm going to take us to Camagüey, Cuba, and we have a lot of information about this on our website, and the brave priests and religious that frankly for decades have labored quietly throughout the island, spreading the message and the gospel of Jesus Christ. These men and women were out there on the front lines this week, and they will continue to stay there. Padre Jose Alvarez, for example, who was brutally beat and locked up. He was missing for several days. A seminarian was taken out of his home in the dark of night. He was finally released 5 days ago. We've heard from Episcopalians, evangelicals, our Jewish friends down there in Cuba. They need help. They're struggling. They're being persecuted. We want the church to speak with one voice. I hope the Holy Father at some point will chime in on this, because the leadership of the church, I think, will be instrumental. There's 2 institutions in Cuba, Monse, that are essential, I think, to a transition. One is the military, and the other one, without a doubt, is the Catholic Church.
And we saw a difference now with a non-Castro regime starting in April. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, there's going to be a series of adjustments coming, and I do think that what we will have in Cuba with the church, if all these parties were to work together, if civil society remains united, I think we have to keep a broader focus and understand that the days and weeks ahead are going to be very difficult. But I want to stress again, unity is essential. American leadership is essential, and we desperately need forces within the church, throughout the church, even other bishops that are not of Cuban-American ancestry to chime in, especially from Boston, from Miami, and lend their voice to this great struggle, and other Christian denominations and other people of faith who I believe will be the change agents in a future Cuba.
Thank you so much, Jason, for helping us understand the many facets of this crisis, and know that we will be praying for the Cuban people and calling on everyone to support the Cuban people in your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Monse.